Will Carnell Williams get his first SEC win as head coach? How crazy will Jordan Hare Stadium be? Who's going to start at quarterback for A&M? This matchup is crazy.
Listen, put me in the parking lot, with Bears, and I'll go out there and play. It don't matter.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies, little Locked On crossover action. I'm Zac Blackerby, Joey Ickes. What an interesting matchup this is, Joey. Going into this season, if you would have told me both teams are going to be 3-6, Carnell Williams is going to be the head coach going into this, and people are going to be talking about spending $90+ million to buy out Jimbo Fisher, I would not have believed you.
Not for a second, not for a single second at all. It's been quite the whirlwind of a season for both fan bases and both programs for sure, but could not have seen this outcome coming at all.
Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing about this from the Auburn perspective, and I guess it's interesting from both sides. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, Joey, but despite both teams essentially being out of everything, like I think it's very unlikely for either team to make a bowl game. Obviously, whoever loses this isn't going to make a bowl game. This is a very jazzed up matchup. I mean, tickets are really, really hard to get. Carnell Williams, making his home debut at Jordan Hare Stadium is a big, big part of that. But the energy around this place is pretty wild considering all the circumstances. Are you getting the same kind of feeling on the A&M side?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how much excitement a matchup between two pretty bad football teams at this point can generate. And right. I think that's sort of where it comes from is, both of these teams are not used to being in the basement of the conference, right? Sure. Or especially. And so this opportunity to, it's you got to win out to make a bowl game. I know A&M has LSU hanging out at the end of the schedule that will make that whole process pretty tough. But this is sort of the last gasp of hope for both of these teams. Can they put together a little bit of momentum towards the end of the year? But yeah, there's a lot of energy going around, and it's exciting and it's good. From our perspective, we're going to be here one way or the other. So it's good to have some energy and have some fun storylines to talk about.
Yeah, it's been a pleasant surprise, I think, with okay, good. There's another relevant home SEC game from the Auburn point of view, and obviously Texas A&M, the storylines circling around that program are super interesting. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Joey, we kind of already said it, but the biggest storyline I'm looking at is Carnell Williams. Can he get a win against an SEC team as a head coach? I don't know how many chances he's going to get to do that after the season. The Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa is looking tough for later this year. So, I mean, this is it, right?
Yeah,
this is it.
Absolutely.
And our friends at BetOnline have Auburn as a slight favorite, opened at 2.5. It's now 1.5. We'll talk more about that line in a moment. But to me, that's the biggest thing. What's the biggest storyline for Texas A&M going into this matchup?
For the Aggies, it comes back to the quarterback position, just like it has all year long. Yeah. At one point in the preseason, one of the news outlets said that the most important player in all of college football was who was going to be A&M's starting quarterback. Because with the right guy, they could have been, a contending team for the SEC West. And with the wrong guy, they could be where they are right now. Or with the wrong confluence of events, they could be where they are right now. And so Connor Wigman appears, based on 1 1.25 of games, he has the opportunity to be that guy. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see a follow-up performance last week because of the flu that went through the A&M program and took 6 guys out of that game against Florida. But if Connor Wigman comes out and plays like he played against Ole Miss, against Auburn, I think A&M fans feel pretty good about their opportunity to go win this game and about their opportunity and their what the program's future looks like. It'll do a whole lot for Jimbo Fisher, too, in terms of the future of the program and recruiting and all that kind of stuff, if they can put together a few solid offensive performances in a row.
Joey, educate me a little bit, and a lot of the Auburn folks watching and listening. Why did it take so long for him to get a shot this season?
Well, I think it was a couple of things that went into it. Is Haynes King has kind of been Jimbo's guy. He's been in the program for this is his 3rd year in the program. He was named the starter last year and got hurt basically a game and 1 completion into the second game and then of 2021, and then came back. They brought Max Johnson in as sort of the veteran transfer, and those two were the guys that were really in the quarterback competition to start the season, and Haynes won that competition. And then two games into the year, they lose to Appalachian State. The quarterback play is clearly a problem, but they make the move to go to Max Johnson. Veteran presence. They're really looking for some stability and some consistency at that point. And then a couple of games later, he gets hurt, and they're looking at the next game is on the road at Alabama. So are you really going to toss a true freshman out in their first game on the road at Alabama? And then Haynes King plays pretty well in that game, and then they have a bye week. And so Haynes sort of earned the right to start that South Carolina game with the way he played against Alabama. And then Haynes gets hurt against South Carolina. That's when Connor Wigman shows up. He's the guy the next week and has one of the best quarterback performances an A&M player has had in close to a decade. So
yeah. When you were previewing this game before the season started, were you guys calling it like the Zach Calzada Bowl, or we called it maybe a potential Zach Calzada revenge game? And, obviously he hasn't played.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's almost unfortunate for Zach, right? He had the opportunity to play last year and put some things on tape that, showed who he could be as a player, and probably would have had some opportunities to play at different places this year, and just wound up at Auburn where he got beat out for the job. And it's been unfortunate for him to not have that chance, but hopefully he'll get the opportunity at some point down the road. But yeah, it was one of those that we were hopeful that Zach would have the opportunity to play and that we'd get the chance to see him this week. But yeah, I think A&M has, at least for most of this season, has had enough of their own concerns to worry about.
Yeah, for sure. And the irony, right, is Auburn hurt Calzada's shoulder, and he's still battling that shoulder injury after transferring to Auburn. So that's just kind of a wild thing. One last storyline I want to sprinkle into this. We're going to talk about individual matchups that we're looking at for Saturday's contest. But if Auburn wins on Saturday, does Jimbo get fired?
Oh, see, I'm sort of the belief that I don't think they'll fire Jimbo. I think they'll make a lot of changes around him. Yeah. And I think there will be an emphasis placed on, hey, you got to go to the portal and you got to get some guys who could come in and be difference makers right away, because they've played like 30 true freshmen this year already. I think they've played about 22 true freshmen and about 30 freshmen, including redshirts this year. And so, last game, they had 20 guys out between suspensions, injuries, and illness. They were missing 20% of their program last week against Florida. And it wasn't the bottom 20%. A lot of it's the starting quarterback and 5-star recruits and stuff like that. So it's just been a war of attrition this year, and I think that's the way that he'll sell it whenever he goes to to the athletic director and to the boosters after the season. I think it would be really tough to see them fire him in season. Because of the money and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have an option already sort of on the table, which would be hard to do in season, it's hard to make that decision to spend that much money without something sort of concrete there as the backup.
Yeah, and I think Auburn doesn't want him to get fired, because right now Auburn's the best job open.
Yeah,
and if Texas A&M comes open, there's a lot of oil money floating around over there, I think A&M would probably be able to attract a little bit more pop than Auburn. So it's kind of weird. You want Auburn to win, but please don't fire him. Please don't fire him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to dive into some individual matchups. What does Auburn, what does Texas A&M need to do to win the game this Saturday? Joey, things are crazy right now with the economy. Look, inflation has us thinking about different ways to cut back. Can you imagine going to the gas pump and paying for gas and not getting cash back instantly? Can you imagine that? I can't.
I honestly can't. And it's one of those things that I used to not be the guy that would hunt for the lowest price on the signs. But as I get a little older, I'm, picking the gas station on the side of the road that's a few cents cheaper. And, and when you have the opportunity with our friends at Upside, you get the opportunity to get that lower price at the pump. But sometimes you pick the higher price because you can get more cash back to make up for it.
That's right. To get started, all you have to do is download the free Get Upside app, and you can use our promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, you claim the offer on whatever you're buying at Upside. It's a very easy-to-use app. You snap a picture of the receipt to prove that you buy it, and then, boom, like magic, Joey, you get cash back. Sometimes it's a few hours, sometimes it's a few days, depending on what the deal is. But download the free Upside app today. Use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase and start getting cash back today. Use promo code LOCKED. Joey, I think the most interesting part of this matchup on Saturday that I'm looking at is, can Auburn do what they need to do to keep their offense on the field, and that's run the football with Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter. We saw them do that a lot against Ole Miss. We saw them do it a little bit more in the second half against Mississippi State, a game they probably should have won this past weekend. Look, Tank and Jarquez are the two best offensive players, and the ineffectiveness of the offensive line in front of them has really, really limited their production. So, like, their stats aren't super great, Joey, but we both know how good both of these running backs are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest area, at least in terms of when Auburn has the ball,
sure,
that I have of concern for me too. And that's part of that goes to the fact that over the last two games, A&M's given up somewhere in the neighborhood of 681 yards rushing between the two games, or something like that. Some nuts.
It's not good.
Yeah, that should not. You should never see that number in two games. But it's just been absolutely terrible in the run game on defense for the Aggies. And it's been the defensive line. It's been the linebackers haven't been good. Yeah. They're missing a couple of guys over the last couple of weeks in the secondary that have been really good run support players. And I think DJ Durkin has sort of taken the approach of we're going to play lighter boxes and allow our secondary guys to come up and make tackles. But we want to try to make teams run on us. And they, in the first part of the year, they were really good with that support coming from the secondary, and it just hasn't come over the course of the last couple of weeks. There's been tons of missed tackles, and it hasn't been pretty for sure.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, like, why is it bad? Because it's not talent. And, you know, last week, like you said, they were missing some guys, so that certainly could have been part of it. But is it a scheme thing? Are they just getting pushed off the line? Are they missing tackles? Is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I bet if you go back and look at every play, it's something different on almost every play. It's a defensive lineman. There was one play.
I'm sure coaches love that.
Oh, yeah, because it's not one thing that you can just harp on, right?
Yeah, right.
It's okay. This play, the defensive lineman stunts the wrong direction. When everybody else is, slanting to the right, one guy slants to the left, and now the A gap is 8 yards wide, and the guy's just cruising through it. And then the next play, the linebacker doesn't read the zone read right, and now the quarterback's out the gate for a 60-yard touchdown on the next play. And and then the safety doesn't come up and support like he's supposed to on the next play, or he misses a tackle. And so it's just a lot of everything. And, we've blamed a lot of things in Aggie land on attrition and on youth this year. So those are sort of the default excuses for when things go wrong, what's causing it.
Yeah, and as far as Auburn's running game, Tank and Jarquez, they're going to be solid, but the offensive line has had some shakeups, right? Their starting center was Nick Brahms. He missed all the season. He kind of retired from football before the season started. Their backup that replaced him has been hurt, so they moved a guard to center. They've been kind of having this revolving door at the two guard situations. The tackles have been okay, not good, but probably the best part of the offensive line, but that is a very low bar to set, Joey. And then Killian Zaire, the JUCO transfer from a few years ago at left tackle, he's probably been the most solid piece on the offensive front. Brian Harsin said that of him a few weeks before he got fired. And then the right tackle for most of the season has been Austin Troxell, and he got hurt against Mississippi State last week, so he's out for the year. So another JUCO guy, Brendan Coffey, will probably start at that right tackle spot. When he engages with his guy, it's pretty good. There's a lot of plays where he isn't always engaged with his guy, and it's like, come on, dude, block somebody. So that's kind of the storyline there as far as why Auburn's offensive line has struggled. I don't think it's all talent. I just think as a unit, they're not super great. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that matchup. All right, Joey, when A&M has the football, what matchup are you looking at?
It's a sort of a similar matchup, but in a different context. And it's back in the trenches. I like to talk about trench play because it's really important. And it's the A&M offensive line. And you talk about everything Auburn's been through in terms of attrition there.
Yeah.
The guy who is A&M starting center coming into the season, mono in fall camp, missed the first two games of the year, came back, was, played admirably, but was clearly not 100%. And then after playing two games, he got hurt. And then, so they're on their backup center. They're on, I think, their fourth left guard. They had a true freshman left guard that played his first few snaps against Alabama, got some more against South Carolina, and was really the starter against Ole Miss. He caught the flu, missed the game last week too. So they've got a lot of youth and a lot of instability, especially on the interior of the offensive line on that left side. The right side's been okay. Layden Robinson and Reuben Fothery have some continuity over there. They've been there together for at least a year. But it's really from the center to the left side. And the left tackle, Trey Zune, he's missed a couple of games due to injury, like they pretty much all have on this point.
Yeah,
he's been up and down too. He's a redshirt freshman. So just again, tons of youth, tons of inconsistency and attrition up front, and they just have not dealt with moving fronts very well at all. And so I worry about Auburn's ability to put pressure on Connor Wigman when he's in the pocket, or especially if Haynes King winds up having to play again. He can't deal with pressure at all. Like they put up 24 points against Florida in the first half. Florida cranked up the pressure in the second half, and he just completely melted. And he got sacked twice, fumbled twice on back-to-back drives, and the offense just melted down because he can't handle pressure. So if Auburn's able to put pressure on the A&M quarterbacks, they can really neutralize a lot of they do have some pretty decent playmakers in wide receivers and the running back. But if A&M can't protect, then it all sort of gess wasted because you just can't get the ball out. And it seems like that's sort of one of the strengths of the Auburn defense is the ability to put pressure on the quarterback. And so if they're able to do that consistently, it's going to cause problems for an A&M offense that hasn't been consistent at all year.
Yeah. Derek Hall has been a solid piece of this Auburn defensive front for the last 2 seasons. And he's a team captain for a reason. He really believes in what this defense can do up front. And then the other edge defender was Ickes Leota. He was a Northwestern transfer. He was having an incredible year, arguably better than Derek Hall. And then he got hurt. He's out for the year. So he'll probably go to the NFL draft after this season. But another transfer that came in, I believe he's actually a grad transfer, is his last year of eligibility. His name is Marcus Bragg. He came from Western Kentucky. And Joey, when he committed, I watched his tape and I did a full show reacting to it. I'm like, okay, like maybe he's the 4th or 5th guy. Joey, he has come in and he has been a great piece to this defense. I think he's been really, really good. Not great at stopping the run, but as far as like pursuit and penetration and impacting the play, he's been great. So keep an eye out for Marcus Bragg. Colby Wooden, arguably the best player on this defense. He can play defensive end. He can play the 3 technique. He kind of moves around. And then Marcus Harris is a grad transfer from Kansas. This is his 2nd year in the program. He's a pretty good defensive lineman as far as engaging in the pass rush and also pretty effective in stopping the run. So those are kind of the 4 names that are going to be running after whoever's at quarterback for Texas A&M, and all 4 of them are pretty solid, Joey.
Well, yeah, that's not a great recipe for A&M because, like I said, they've had some trouble, especially when teams can get pressure with 4. Like it causes issues for everybody, but especially when you've got a young quarterback and young receivers and a relatively complex offense that deals with a lot of reads after the snap. If you got a defense that can put pressure on you with 4, it causes a lot of problems. And so it's not a great recipe for A&M to know that Auburn has that ability to heat you up with just 4 guys without bringing pressure.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. The second level is the weakness of this defense. I think the DBs have played pretty well. Some injuries back there, right? One of Auburn's main guys missed Mississippi State. We'll see if he plays against Texas A&M on Saturday. But the linebackers, which we all thought would be a strength of this team going into the season, has not been that. Owen Papo, it's his 2nd straight year of being a team captain. He's Auburn's highest rated recruit on the roster right now. I believe he's the only 5-star. And he just hasn't been the same guy. He's never really turned the corner. He got injured last year. Just hasn't ever really looked the same. And so the guy next to him, Cam Riley, when he's healthy, but that's kind of been a revolving door. Wesley Steiner had one of the worst performances in a very short stint that I saw covering Auburn last week against Mississippi State. So we'll see how much action he gets, but that's a concern. The linebacking core is a concern. So Mississippi State went after it early last week. I'm curious to see what Texas A&M does with that.
Yeah, A&M has Devon Achane is the A&M running back, and he's one of the best running backs in the country. And it's unfortunate that he's kind of been locked down in this A&M offense. He's basically been the entire offense for most of the season.
Understand that.
And he's a weapon in the passing game just as much as he is in the running game. So that's probably an opportunity that they'll see to be able to take advantage of. And the funny thing is, Florida did the same exact thing to A&M's second level players, because that's really the weakness of the A&M defense as well as the linebackers. And
cooler running back name, Joey. Devon Achane or Tank Bigsby?
Oh, I think you got to go with Tank. Like Tank is just like, especially when your coach's name is Cadillac, like it doesn't get any better in terms of running back names for them than that.
That's pretty cool. What's the best name on the Texas A&M roster?
There's a freshman defensive back whose name is Smoke Bowie. It's not his real first name, but everybody, even like 24/7 and stuff like that calls him Smoke Bowie. So that's a pretty awesome. Good one. Yeah.
We just lost a Smoke Monday to the NFL.
Yeah. I remember smoking in the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's pretty stinking cool. All right, let's go over what the line is for Bet Online and what our picks are for this weekend right here on this Locked On crossover with Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. Joey, can you imagine placing a bet anywhere other than Bet Online? Because I can't. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I can't. It's the number one place for sports betting information, stats, news, analysis, all of it. It's the place.
And just the mobile website is so easy to use. It's fast. Question: do you want to place wagers on a website that takes a long time? Yes or no?
Absolutely not. It's like you just can't do something like that when there's a delay possibility. You know, the line changes between the time when you click to place the bet and when it actually goes through. You just wind up in all kinds of trouble with that.
Yep. Bet Online, you don't have to worry about that. Bet Online, exactly. You can head to their website today, use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. All right, Joey, our friends at Bet Online, they've got the line now at the time of us recording this, and it may move closer and closer to a push as game time approaches, but it's currently Auburn -1.5. I believe it opened at Auburn -2.5, so it's slowly moving to Texas A&M's favor. This is Auburn's first time being favored in a month, Joey. I was a little surprised when I saw the line. What was your gut reaction when it came out?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of makes sense that it's really close, right? It's two, like I said, two really bad football teams right now that are going through all kinds of stuff. How many times have we said the words, that guy's missed some games due to injury. We don't know if that guy will play because he's been hurt.
The whole show, right?
Exactly, over and over. And so it just makes sense that these two teams are extremely close in terms of what they've done this season, how disappointing they've been this season, and it just makes sense that when they take the field, that it would be a point and a half, 2 points from one another whenever they get there. It's
another interesting thing looking at the lines over here at Bet Online is the over-under was originally set at 50. It has now moved to 48.5. So Vegas slowly getting less and less confident in both teams' offenses.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, A&M has only scored more than 24 points twice all year. And one of them was against Sam Houston State. Yes. And the other one, they lost 31-28 to Ole Miss. So anytime you see a line north of 50 for A&M or at around 50, whoever it is predicting A&M to lose because A&M can't score points in chunks. And so if the line is shifting towards A&M from a point spread standpoint, it absolutely makes sense that the point total would creep down too, because what it really feels like they're expressing is more confidence in A&M's ability to stop the other team.
So who do you think is more likely to score 24 points on Saturday? I think I'm leaning Auburn there.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, just because A&M just has not been good at putting the ball in the end zone all year long. I mean, they just haven't. And so it's been so tough to watch, just to be honest with you, because it's just been bad offensive football for most of the year. And there's a little bit of life against Ole Miss. The quarterback comes in his first start and throws 4 touchdown passes. But unless they get that type of performance from Connor Wigman again, they're going to wind up at 21 or 24 points, and it's going to be tough for them to score more than Auburn, especially if Auburn's able to run the ball.
Yeah, I don't think we've mentioned him yet, but Auburn's quarterback, Robby Ashford, was not the starter to start the year, but due to performance and I think some injury to TJ Finley, Robby's the guy, right? And the team, I think, looks better when Robby's in. So he has gotten better over the course of the season. Some of the veterans on the team have been really impressed with his development. He really turned it on in the second half last week. And so I think that's also added to some of the excitement and some of the energy and, I guess, faith in Auburn's offense that they're going to be able to score 28 to 30 points potentially on Saturdays because of what he was able to do in the second half. Super athletic, super mobile, transfer from Oregon, played baseball at Oregon, a dual sport guy. So I'm curious to see if he continues that trend upward and is able to do what he did in the second half. He had a strong performance against Ole Miss as well. And he actually didn't look that bad against Arkansas either. The whole team did, but his numbers were actually okay. So I'm curious to see what that looks like too. And he's young. He's kind of all over the place at times when he gets flustered. So I'm just curious to see how he responds to all that too.
Yeah, and it's one of the things A&M has not been good at in terms of stopping the run is when you get a quarterback that can run. I mean, we saw what Anthony Richardson did to them last week. We saw what Alabama was able to do with a backup quarterback who, had hardly ever played. They completely shifted to a run-heavy run scheme and just tore A&M up with the quarterback run and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if, with the added dynamic of the quarterback run, if A&M can even attempt to hold up in this game.
All right, give me your pick.
I think Auburn's going to win. I just don't think A&M can score. I think it probably winds up being a relatively similar score to most of A&M's games, which is it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 27 or 30 to 21 or 24. And so I think Auburn wins by a little less than a touchdown, and A&M probably has the ball towards the end of the game with a chance to win and just can't get it.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm thinking Auburn 27-20, something like that.
Yeah,
27-21, right. 27-24. Yeah, I think that's about where it's going to be. Joey, for the Auburn folks watching and listening, how can they check out everything you got going on, man?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Joey Ickes. You can find us. I work for USA Today as well, running their Aggie site, aggieswire.usatoday.com. And you can check out Locked On Aggies at Locked On Aggies on YouTube, on Twitter, all the places.
And for the Texas A&M folks that want the Auburn side of things, I write for auburndaily.com, as well as I put up stuff all the time. Locked On Auburn, wherever you get your podcast. For Joey and me, this has been a Locked On crossover with Locked On Aggies and Locked On Auburn.